The ash was falling again. Elliot Graves stood on the porch, gas mask dangling from one hand, watching the gray flakes drift down like filthy snow. It never came heavy, just constant, like the world was being erased a particle at a time. He didn't remember the last time he saw the sun. Maybe it had been February. Maybe it had been before. There were 6 houses visible from where he stood, all silent. 4 were empty. One still had smoke curling from the chimney. The Nelsons, probably. And the last had collapsed under the weight of the ash weeks ago. He used to teach geology at the high school. He'd once joked with his students about the Yellowstone Caldera, how the whole Midwest would be covered in ash if it ever erupted. They laughed. He laughed. No one was laughing now. Inside the house, his daughter Maya was coughing again. He moved fast, zipped the outer door shut, beat the ash from his coat, and stepped into the airlock chamber they'd rigged from plastic sheeting and duct tape. Once inside the main room, he slipped the gas mask back over the hook. "Maya, drink water," he said gently. She sat on the couch, blanket up to her chin, face pale. Her eyes had that glazed over look, the one he'd started calling ash fever. The doctor down the road had said it wasn't real, but the doctor had left 2 weeks ago. No one had heard from her since. The radio crackled on the shelf. He kept it running, always scanning, mostly static, occasionally a looped FEMA message. But today was different. To all station was, if you can hear this, northbound roads are compromised. Repeat, do not attempt to reach Rapid City. All convoys redirected. Shelters are full. Stay in place. Breathe through filtration. Do not expose lungs to ash particulate. Repeat, stay in place. Then static again. Maya sipped her water. Her fingers trembled. "Dad, what if the air never clears?" Elliot looked at the sealed windows, the thin light barely squeezing through. "Then we waited out." "For how long?" He didn't answer. He kept a logbook in the kitchen drawer. Every day he marked a line. This morning was day 78 since the eruption. He flipped through past entries. Day 6. Supermarket looted. Took canned food from abandoned car. Day 17. Neighbor's generator exploded. No power to pump water now. Day 31. Maya started coughing. Day 59. Saw someone digging at night. Ash up to their knees. Didn't approach. On day 60, he stopped writing entries. Today he started again. Day 78. Radio confirms Rapid City is gone. Maya's cough worse. Rationing masks. Need more charcoal. Heard something moving on the roof last night. Didn't investigate. He paused, then added, dreamt of sunlight. Woke up crying. Outside, the ash kept falling. Inside, the silence felt too quiet. And in the distance, just faint enough to doubt, came a noise he hadn't heard in weeks. A knock. 1, then 2 more. Steady, calm, like someone wanted to be invited in. The knock came again. 3 deliberate taps. Not frantic, not begging. Just there. Elliot stood frozen, hand resting on the drawer where he kept the pistol. He hated the thing, hadn't fired it in over a decade. But now, it felt like part of his skin. Maya sat up on the couch, coughing softly. Was that someone at the door? He nodded, slowly, silently, then moved toward the airlock. The outer chamber was dim, light seeping through the layers of plastic and ash-streaked glass. He paused before opening the internal flap. The last thing he needed was a rush of contaminated air, or worse, a stranger with lungs full of rot and lungs desperate to share it. "Who's there?" he called out through the door's intercom pipe. a modified dryer vent they'd jerry-rigged for sound. A woman's voice came back, raspy and tired. "We're not sick. Please, we just need shelter. Just for the night." "How many of you?" "3, me and my boys. We've been walking since Scottsbluff. Our van gave out 2 days ago." Elliot stared through the peephole. The haze outside was thick, but he could just make them out. A woman, probably mid-30s, wearing a heavy parka caked in ash. Beside her, 2 figures huddled. Kids, maybe 10 or 12. "You'll contaminate the whole house," he said. "We have masks. We can strip outside. We won't come in unless you say." Maya's voice came quietly from the hallway behind him. "Dad, you can't leave them out there." He hesitated. Every instinct screamed, "Don't do it." But some quieter voice, one that sounded a lot like the teacher he used to be, said, "If you close the door on people now, you're not surviving. You're giving up." He opened the outer door. One at a time, they stepped into the chamber. The woman removed her mask and coat carefully. Her face was pale, lips cracked. She looked older than her years, like the ash had aged her from the inside out. The boys followed suit. He sprayed them with alcohol mist, made them wait 5 minutes, then opened the flap. They stepped into the house and blinked against the low interior light. "I'm Elise," she said. "This is Daniel and Micah. Elliot, that's my daughter, Maya." Maya gave a weak wave, then curled back up under the blanket. She was shivering. Elise noticed. "She's sick. Ash fever. Started a few weeks back." Elise opened her bag and pulled out a vial. "Dexamethasone. It's not a cure, but it helped Daniel when he had the breathing fits." Elliot took it, cautious. "You a nurse?" "Veterinarian. Still know how lungs work." They shared canned food that night. The boys sat quietly, like they were used to not being heard. Elise stared at the fire, eyes wide, alert. "We passed a lot of empty houses," she said softly, "but not as many bodies as I expected." "You think people made it out?" Elliot asked. "No," she said. "I think they went somewhere else." That night, Elliot stayed awake while the others slept. The wind howled outside, pushing ash against the windows in dull, scraping waves. He checked the lock on the door, then checked it again. Because even though Elise had looked him in the eye, even though the boys barely spoke, there was something in the way they stood out there, waiting in the ash, like they already knew he'd open the door. By morning, the ash had sealed the front door shut. Elliot had to shoulder it open just to get the morning airlock cleared. The outer world looked like a moonlit graveyard. Slate gray, muffled, frozen mid-collapse. Inside, Maya's fever had spiked. Elise gave her a second dose of the steroid and sat by her side with a cool cloth. The boys sat at the table, whispering in a language Elliot didn't recognize. Maybe it was just a game. Maybe not. "How long were you really on the road?" Elliot asked, pouring boiled water into mugs. Elise looked up, surprised. 3 weeks, give or take." "Then how are your coats barely torn? How do you have a full bottle of dexamethasone?" She held his gaze for a moment. No panic. Just calm. "We came from a clinic. One of the last ones still operating. We had access to things." "Clinic still running 3 weeks after the sky died?" "Not anymore," she said flatly. That afternoon, the boys started drawing in the condensation on the windows. Spirals, circles, repeating over and over. "What are you drawing?" Elliot asked Daniel. "The sky before," he said, as if it were obvious. "Before what?" The boy just smiled. "That night Maya stopped coughing, but not because she got better. Her breathing slowed to a soft rattle like her lungs were filling with glue. Elise suggested a nebulizer treatment. Elliot didn't have one. I could build something, Elise offered, with tubing and boiling water. It's risky, but it might work. And if it doesn't, then we wait and hope. At midnight, Elliot couldn't sleep. He stepped outside with the gas mask, climbed to the roof, and cleared the satellite dish. It hadn't picked up anything new in days, but he was desperate. Anything, any message. Instead, he found footprints in the ash. Fresh, leading up to the side of the house, then stopping. No return trail, just a single set of prints. And something else. Carved into the siding, just above eye level, a spiral. He went inside and locked every door twice, then stood in the hallway, watching the living room. Elise sat by the fire reading one of his books. The boys were asleep, curled in opposite corners of the room. Everything looked normal, but in the reflection of the window just for a second, he thought he saw her smile, even though her mouth hadn't moved. Maya hadn't spoken all morning. Her fever broke just after dawn, but her silence was worse than the coughing. She sat wrapped in blankets, eyes on the wall, hands trembling slightly like she was listening to something only she could hear. She's improving, Elise said, spooning broth into a tin bowl. You should rest. But Elliot couldn't. The dreams were getting worse. Spirals, buried shapes, ash falling upward. He found the boys in the hallway again, whispering behind the closed laundry room door. When he stepped closer, the whispering stopped. When he opened the door, no one was there, just wet footprints on the tile, even though no one had been outside. Later that day, he checked the emergency supplies, the closet in the basement where he kept the backup filters, food, and fuel tabs. Something was off. A line of canned goods had been reorganized, neatly, stacked in a spiral, and someone had taken the batteries. He climbed back upstairs and found Elise cleaning the kitchen. Did you go through the basement? No, she said, not even looking up. The battery stock is missing. Kids probably took them. They're bored. We all are. They weren't bored enough to draw spirals in canned beans 2 days ago. This time she looked up, but her expression was flat. You're tired, Elliot. You're starting to see patterns where there aren't any. He didn't reply, but he didn't take his eyes off her either. That night, he heard Maya crying. He ran to her, heart pounding, but Elise was already in the room, arms around her, whispering softly into her ear. It's okay, she said. The sky's not angry. It just wants to be remembered. Maya calmed. Elliot stepped into the room. Elise, I told you not to. She needed comfort, she said, standing up slowly. We all do. He waited until the house was dark, then crept into the hallway and opened her backpack. Inside, 2 vials of something unmarked. A black and white photo of a hospital with strange symbols burned into the corners, and a small recorder still running. He hit play. A voice, Elise's, spoke softly. Day 32 since initial contact, subject exposure progressing. The child hears it, the father resists. We'll reassess after sleep deprivation sets in. He stopped the tape, heart pounding. The next morning, Elise was gone. So were the boys. But the front door was locked from the inside, and in the ash on the floor of the living room, a perfect spiral made of tiny gray footprints. He checked every window, every room, even the attic. Elise was gone. The boys, too. No footprints outside, no broken locks, just the spiral in the ash. Did they ever exist at all? Or had the ash simply given him what he needed and taken it away? He played the tape again. Her voice came through the recorder clearly, confident. It's not a pathogen. It's a pattern. The ash holds memory, fossilized frequencies encoded in the particulate. When inhaled in concentration, certain individuals begin to hear the hum. If the subject is receptive, the ash can guide them. If not, resistance escalates. The tape clicked off. Elliot looked at Maya. She was awake now, sitting up, eyes glassy. Did Elise do something to you? She blinked slowly. She said we had to be quiet, that the ash doesn't like loud thoughts. You heard her say that? No, I dreamed it. Her fingers moved slowly over her blanket, tracing tiny curves. Spirals. The radio crackled. For the first time in days, a new voice, different from FEMA. To any survivors near the southern corridor, do not trust those traveling alone. Avoid spirals. Avoid prolonged exposure to open sky. Signal frequencies now confirmed active. Repeat. Avoid spiral formations. Then static again. He pulled the batteries from the radio and grabbed his emergency respirator, the one with the triple filter. He suited Maya up in the backup, less protective but better than nothing. We're leaving, he said. But where will we go? East, toward the hills. There's a ranger station there. Used to be used for firewatch. Might still have gear. Maya nodded slowly. Elise said they're waiting for us there. How would she know that? Because that's where the ash came from. Elliot froze. What do you mean? She didn't answer, just stared at the window, watching the flakes fall. It doesn't come from the sky anymore, she whispered. It's coming up. He didn't ask more. He packed what little food remained, slung the rifle over his back, and lifted Maya into the wagon. They would drag it as far as they could. Masks tight, heads down. As they stepped outside, the ash gave beneath his boots. Not like snow, not like dirt, like breath. They moved through the silence, gray on gray. Trees buried to the knees, cars sunken into ash drifts. The air was thick, metallic, like breathing rust through a sponge. Elliot pulled the wagon steadily, each step harder than the last. Maya lay curled under a tarp, mask pressed tight, breathing shallow. She hadn't spoken since they left. The firewatch tower rose in the distance like a finger pointed at a dead sky. He reached it by dusk. The stairs groaned under his weight, dust flaking from each tread. The hatch at the top was sealed, but not locked. He pried it open and pulled Maya up into the tower with him. It was empty. Maps, radios, a cot, a rack of old rations in vacuum packs, shelves lined with blank notebooks, and a strange machine bolted to the far wall, unfamiliar to Elliot. It looked military. Antennas, oscilloscopes, a frequency analyzer maybe. The readout blinked faintly. Signal detected. Origin unknown. Harmonic match. 87.14% Elliot powered the radio console. The signal came through at once. Not words, not music, just a tone. Deep, layered, like a whale song played backward through static. Maya stirred. I hear it, she whispered. You don't have to listen. It's not outside anymore, she said. It's in the ash. It's in me. He turned off the machine. The signal faded, but not completely. Something about it lingered, like the tone had burned a groove into the air. Elliot found an old journal buried under a desk drawer. Pages yellowed but legible. Patterns in wind flow detected before initial seismic activity. Ash particulate displays non-random behavior. Signal predates eruption. may not be of terrestrial origin. The last entry was underlined in red. It was never about the volcano. It was about the carrier. Maya sat up slowly. They're not coming to save us. Who's they? She looked out the window at the horizon, where the sky should have been. The ones who sent the signal. They just needed it to spread. And you think that's what the eruption did? She nodded. Ash is memory. The air is just how it travels. That night, Elliot didn't sleep. The signal played again, even with the machine off. He could feel it in the tower's bones, in the vibrations of the floor, in Maya's slow, even breath. He looked at her. Peaceful. Too peaceful. He picked up the rifle, set it on the table, and stared at it, because the last thing he wrote in his logbook back home echoed in his head. Dreamt of sunlight. Woke up crying. He hadn't cried in days. But now, the tears came, because the sky was whispering something to Maya, and she was finally whispering back. The sun never rose. The sky stayed a dull graphite, ash still falling, thin but endless. The firewatch tower creaked as the wind shifted. Somewhere below, a branch snapped. Something moved through the woods. Elliot hadn't touched the rifle again. He just sat by the window, listening. Maya woke with her eyes already open. They're almost here, she said calmly. Who? The ones who remember. The ones who are memory. She walked to the console, the strange machine, and pressed her hand to it. It powered on without a switch. I think I was always supposed to bring them in. Maya, that's not you talking. No, she said, and smiled sadly. It's all of us. The readout on the console changed. Reception. Stabilized carrier status. Active transmission. Imminent. Elliot stepped forward, hands shaking. You said they're coming. From where? She turned, slowly. Not from space, not from Earth, from underneath, from before. The signal is a key. The ash was just the envelope. He looked out the window. The horizon pulsed, subtly, rhythmically, as if the land itself were breathing. Down in the trees, glowing eyes blinked open one by one. Dozens, maybe more. The signal grew louder, not sound, but pressure, like a thought being shoved into his skull. Join us. Let go. Be remembered. He turned to Maya, no longer shivering, no longer weak. She stood tall, eyes locked on something unseen. Her voice overlapped now, two tones like a chord sung by a choir of one. It's not death, she said. It's preservation. Elliot stepped back, grabbed the rifle, not to fire it, just to feel something real. But Maya didn't flinch. She walked to the window and raised both hands. The sky shimmered, and the ash stopped falling. He stood frozen. The silence was heavier than the ash had ever been. Then the machine emitted one final message. Not printed, not broadcasted, but spoken. In his voice. Thank you, Elliot Graves. Transmission complete. The console went dark. The pressure lifted. Outside, the ash began to fall again, but slower now. Gentle, almost peaceful. Elliot sat beside Maya as the first light in months pushed dimly through the haze. Not sunlight, not really. Just the memory of it. And somewhere, deep in the earth, something old had started whispering again.